Have you you've seen the polling data probably more so than I on black voters as it pertains to the Democrats moving forward, and it's looking really bad. I hear. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, it's down. Blacks are still the only major demographic where Biden is still above water. And by the way, since you brought this up, there's this business about drop kicking Biden, Kamala Harris in favor of somebody else because their poll numbers are so bad. Kamala Harris's are worse than Joe Biden's. Never going to happen. The nominee in 2024 on the Democratic side will be Kamala Harris.
Really?
If Joe Biden can't make it.
Oh, no.
They have no choice. Black people are the most loyal part of the Democratic base, and black women are more loyal than black men. And her approval among black females is probably in the mid-70s. And if they perceive Kamala Harris to be drop-kicked for somebody else, especially a white man, after for decades they've indoctrinated black people into believing when you criticize a black person, often the criticism is because of sexism and racism. They cannot do that. They painted themselves into a corner. The only way Kamala Harris leaves is if she says, I want to leave. I'm not competent. I want somebody else to take my place. And she's not going to do that because she ran for president.
But have you heard the theories that she'll take some prestigious offer at an NGO or something, or a big global initiative?
Only if she says, okay, I want to leave voluntarily. But if she's perceived as being kicked out, black women will not vote Republican. They just won't vote.
But so even outside of that, it's looking like the polling has gotten so bad. They say if Democrats lose, I think they need at least 80% of the black vote in order to win.
Right.
If the polling for them, if the polling for Republicans rises above 20% or something like that, like the Democrats lose outright. And it's looking like we're there.
That's right. Because the Democrats have lost the white vote since 1964. They rely on convincing black people that the issue is social justice, not crime, not schools, not breakdown of the family, but the fact that there's systemic racism. And Democrats have convinced black people that that's the number one problem facing America.
But something weird is happening. The Democratic Party got whiter in the past couple of years and wealthier.
Right.
It's like they're abandoning that.
They've always been.
Yeah,
there's a book called Who Really Cares by a guy named Arthur C. Brooks. He was a public policy professor at Syracuse. He wasn't even particularly conservative. And he found out nobody had ever done extensive study on whether or not liberals or conservatives were more generous or less generous. So he did a study, and he found out, much to his surprise, that conservatives were far more generous with their time and with their money than liberals, contrary to what he thought. And it's for two reasons. First of all, conservatives are more religious than liberals. Liberals give just as much money as religious conservatives do, but there are just fewer of them. And secondly, most conservatives believe that welfare should be done people to people, church to church, organization to organization, not government. And they walk the walk and talk the talk. And so it's really interesting how a lot of black people perceive the Republicans to be only concerned about money when in fact they're more generous with their time and with their money than liberals are.
What do you think is going to happen in the midterms or in 2024 with particularly with the black vote? Right. But I'm wondering if this precipitates just a
Well, I think
Democrat
Republicans
failure.
are spiking the football a little early on the midterms because inflation is getting a little bit better, the gas prices are getting a little bit better, and they're able to spend the jobs report, even though most of these jobs that were created the last month were part-time jobs. And the media is still in bed with Joe Biden. They can't stand Republicans. They deathly fear that Donald Trump will rear his ugly head in 2024. And so no matter what it is, they spin it in favor of Joe Biden. I mean, the guy doesn't even know where he is. And the Hunter Biden story has been suppressed still, and they're not connecting the dots. It's not about Hunter Biden's crack habit. I don't care about that. I care about whether or not Joe Biden is compromised.
Agreed.
And apparently he is.
Yeah, I've been saying this, man. People, they look at the historical trends where the president's party loses seats in their first term. Mm-hmm. They're looking at the misery index saying Democrats are going to get crushed. And then there are some polls that just came out recently in aggregate showing that the race has tightened. That Republicans, so for months, we're talking about how Republicans were up three points in the generic ballot, which is apocalyptic for Democrats. Now it's like 0.1, or even I think 538 has it inverted. Democrats have took the lead again.
That's right.
Still, historically, that should signal Democrats losing. But I'm telling people, if you look at that stuff and you think that means, if you're looking at all this stuff and you think you've got it in the bag, you don't. People need to go out and act as though no matter what the polls are, you need to get 3 or even 10 of your friends to go out and vote.
Yeah, we're treating Biden right now like a toxic boyfriend or girlfriend, where it's like, I know I should break up with her, but I don't want to get back on Tinder. And it's like, we have to. We have to hold it.
And we don't know how the reversal of Roe v. Wade is going to play. There are lots of things that can happen between now and then.
That seems to have helped Democrats.
It has, yeah.
So if you look at the real...
certainly helped their fundraising.
Absolutely. And if you look at Real Clear Politics, you can see that the gap just closed from Democrats to Republicans in aggregate. This is not one single poll.
Yeah, and again, I don't even know if I'm a Democrat anymore, you guys. I've been calling myself a bleeding heart centrist, but I will say, like, for liberals listening, you want to hold your party accountable. You want to have the best Democratic Party that actually has values and morals and isn't just a bunch of corporate hacks. You want the best for your party. You don't want to just blindly support a president who's doing a terrible job, because that is bad for the future of the party. That's bad for you.
But who are you talking to?
I don't know, man. There's another person out there like me somewhere listening.
You just changed somebody's life.
Yeah, I hope so.
I feel like for you had to get thrown to the wolves by the left before you finally...
Well, that's why I'm trying to help everybody listening. It's like, guys, don't rock bottom like me. Don't let your life be destroyed before you're like, maybe I should have a Republican friend.
Just one, because they'll be like, I don't care about your politics.
I'm like, oh, we can just hang out and play basketball.
What was the spark where you realized something was amiss?
I mean, I did before my life fell apart. It was when I would hang out with prominent liberals and they would talk a certain way and say that certain things were silly. And then they would go to their Twitter and say the opposite. And that's why I'm like, oh, we're lying. It was when the first time I talked to people who were more conservative or libertarians were people of color at my jujitsu gym, where when I went to like staff meetings of liberal publications, their get-togethers in like Park Slope, Brooklyn, it was very, very white and very privileged.
You're like, hey, all that stuff you're saying, it applies to this room. And they're like, shh, shut up.
Yeah. Get out. But it was that. It was they'll be tweeting about Black Lives Matter as they're walking down the street, and then they're like, oh, black person, cross the street. Like, it was just, it was the hypocrisy.
This is Sweden, in my experience, to the T. Because I went to Sweden. Do you remember that when Donald Trump said, the last night in Sweden thing? Do you remember that? So this was back in 2017. There was a documentary that came up on Fox, or like a short, talking about crime going up in Sweden. I go there, and I find that a lot of the claims are largely exaggerated and didn't understand the complexities of Sweden. But what I did find is that people in Sweden are, so many of them, not all of them, but so much of their culture was very much in advance of how the U.S. was. They are they're Scandinavian white people talking about how not racist they are, and then trying everything in their power to keep black people away from them because they were just, they wanted people to think they weren't racist, but they were really racist. But I should also say, maybe that's actually wrong. Maybe I should say culturist, because they didn't like people who didn't speak their language. They didn't like people who didn't look like them. So it was not just race. It was even white people who didn't speak, Swedish. They'd be like, well, we don't want to work with you. It's just, we don't want you around.
They're just D-bags in general.
I'm thinking like if I was raised in like a tribe in Africa with people with darker skin tone or whatever, then I would be weirded out by people with light skin tone if I saw, not necessarily weirded out, but like it's a familiarity bias. I don't even know what racism is. Like, I think racism small r and racism big R. Big R is where you're like, you're different than me. It's, racial slur. And whereas small r maybe is more classist. I don't know.
But this is America. This is the only majority white country that's elected a black president. There is a sociologist at Harvard. All sociologists are left wing. His name is Orlando Patterson. He's black. And in the 90s, he says America is the least racist majority white society in the world, provides more opportunities for blacks than any society in the world, including all of those of Africa. I want to tell you a quick story, Jamie. When my race was over, I'm in a restaurant in LA on the West Side, and I get there, and my buddy hasn't arrived yet, and there's a table next to me with two ladies, and I think they feel sorry for me. Yeah. So they start talking to me, and they were 85 years old. They'd known each other since the second grade. They were Jewish. One was a human rights activist, whatever that means. The other one was a psychotherapist. Yeah. And then about 15 minutes into the conversation, one of them said, "Wait a minute, I know who you are. You're that guy that ran for governor." I said, "That's right." And she had a big smile. And she said, "Guess who I voted for?" I said, "You didn't vote for me." And she said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Let's see. We're in the west side of L.A. You're both Jewish. One of you is a human rights activist. It doesn't take Columbo to put that together. You didn't vote for me." And she said, "No, you're right, I didn't." I said, "Now, how do you feel about the crime?" And she said, "I have a friend who got mugged and told me about that." I said, "How do you feel about the quality of our schools?" She said, "I would never put my kids in a public school." "How do you feel about the way Gavin Newsom shut down the state in a more severe way than anybody else did? Sitting up there at that restaurant, not wearing a mask, not engaging in social distancing with the people that drafted the mandates, had his own kids in person." She said, "I thought it was hypocritical." "How do you feel about the fact that people leaving California?" So they agree with me on everything. I said, so here we are completing each other's sentences, yet you wouldn't vote for me. Do you have any Republican friends at all? And they look at each other and they admitted that they didn't. They said, this is the first time you've ever had a conversation with somebody who's conservative, isn't it? And they both said yes. Wow. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Talk about being in a cocoon.
You should have just called them racist, bigots, all those things you said were conservative, alt-right talking
and
points.
then be like, buy my book and just throw it.
And then they bought my drinks and they bought my dinner.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Well, and that's the thing.
I ordered lobster.
I think
I wasn't going to order lobster at first, but then
I don't even like lobster.
Then I upped it. Yeah.
I think one of the most insidious words is when if you change your mind, you're called a grifter. And I've made jokes about this. I've made jokes about it on Cast Castle on the podcast, because essentially it's saying that if you evolve a viewpoint, if you step out of your bubble, if I expected when I came on this show that I would just kind of be like token liberal guy, make jokes, make fun of myself, all done. And I've been fascinated at how a lot of my views have changed, and not because, Tim hired me when I was like liberal. My views have changed because I'm just talking to different people, which we should all be doing. And in fact, when I talk to some conservative friends and I still give some of my bleeding heart points of view, they go, oh man, I never thought of that either. And that's good as well. You're not grifting, you're growing.
This is what I try to explain to people.
You're searching for the truth. I'm searching for the truth.
That's it.
You are.
Yes.
And
if you have that, I don't care if you're a Republican.
Malcolm X said, I'm for the truth no matter who's telling it.
Yes.
And that's how I feel.
Yep.
I'm willing to change my mind. Make me change my mind. Give me the facts. Give me something I've said wrong, thought wrong, and I will change my mind.
My God, I got excited when you quoted Malcolm X. Okay.
I'm
back. I'm focused.
One thing you got to be careful of is love bombs from getting this new crowd of followers.
We talked about that with the Marjorie Taylor Greene, where every time now I get a compliment, they're like, we're love bombing you, Jamie. And I'm like, I know.
Because it feels good to get accepted.
It does. Well, and look, man, I still see a lot of stuff. I'll tweet like an innocuous joke about, something I saw that day. And, I know people who found me on here are like, will just start like ranting about Biden. And I'm like, okay, bud, like you can take it down. I'm not a Biden fan. But I think that, look, when you start changing your mind because you're being accepted, no good. If you're doing it for a paycheck, that's where the term grifter makes sense. If you are asking questions to people on the left and to people on the right, and your only goal, like you said, Larry, is just to find the truth, or like, dude, I just want people to start coming up with solutions. And I know that if we're screaming at, that's why my questions to you were all about like, hey, how do we get people to talk about this? Hey, take politics out. What are you telling someone who's struggling? How do you act as a man? Like, forget what party you are.
Let me actually ask you then, I guess, the next step in the question of solutions. If the perception is that people are unwilling to listen, they're hyper-tribalized, your friends of 40 years, I think you said, was it 40 years, wouldn't even read an article, where do you think this is all heading?
Well, there's a certain percentage of people that you have to write off. They will not listen. They do not care. They're locked into their positions. I'm not sure what the percentage of that is. There was a 2002 Fox opinion poll. 8% of Americans believe Elvis is still alive.
Oh boy.
6% believe if you send him a letter, he'll get it. Now, it seems to me that 8% you just got to write, just write him off. I think most people are pursuing their own personal interest. They want to realize their God-given potential. I think most people do that. And if you are persistent and you say things in a persuasive way, simply, I think most people will at least listen to you. At least I operate under that assumption. And you have to operate under that assumption. Other than how do you get up in the morning and just go, half the country is irredeemable. I'm going to avoid that.
Right.
I just can't do that.
Yes.
And I won't do that.
You guys said earlier, like the truth, that you're both seeking the truth. I get nervous about that because I feel like it's subjective to, in that there's no absolute truth. It's facts. You could say there are facts, but the way you look at the fact is your version of the fact.
Well, either Donald Trump mocked the handicapped reporter or he didn't. Either Donald Trump said there were good Nazis and bad Nazis in Charlottesville or he didn't. These are just facts. He did not do that. He did not mock a reporter, yet much of the country believes that. I don't believe in this. I'll tell you my truth. There is a truth. Often it's hard to find, and often things are gray, but there are certain things that happened and didn't happen. 2 + 2 = 4. I don't care how you feel.
Wait a second.
What your sexual orientation is,
and then I think it's
what your
1,
sexual
0
orientation
or
is.
something.
2 + 2 still equals 4.
Yeah, I think that a piece of relationship advice I actually give that I think we could really use when it comes to politics is if me and Ian are in a relationship and we get in a fight and all I want to do is prove that Ian's wrong and all he wants to do is prove that I'm wrong, nothing's going to get accomplished. You know, even sometimes by the time, let's say I apologized, then maybe even Ian throws in something like, yeah, well, you should apologize. You really hurt me. And it's like, oh man, we're still going. And I think that if you're in a fight with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, if you can just focus on, hey, what could I have done better? Even if clearly my girlfriend was in the wrong, right? And I'm just like, well, I guess I could have reacted better. And then I get to bring that to the table, and she brings what she did wrong to the table. Now we both grow. I wish that Republicans could hold themselves accountable more, liberals could hold themselves accountable more, and instead of just attack, it could just be, hey, how do we get better? And again, I don't even know.
I think you got to listen to the people you don't like.
That's what it is.
It's heroic.
Of course.
Like the truth is factual, but the way people feel is how you convince. So people want to, I think some people maybe want to just lay it on the facts and be like, this is the truth. But if you don't feel what they feel about it, then it's not, the word true doesn't really ring.
You have to connect with them on like a human level. I'm sure you've learned that in years of radio and speaking, where it's, yeah, if you're just shouting facts at someone who disagrees with you, you're right, they could totally tune out. But if you can actually connect with them as a person through like stories, like the stories you tell about your friends, I go, ooh, I've had a friend I've had to walk away from that, and you feel it and you can connect to it, and then you can listen.
My mom used to say, the truth will not set you free if delivered without hope.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.